Okay, welcome back. Here we are at the beautiful Weston Kierland Golf Club in Scottsdale, Arizona. And in this video, let's talk about how to fix that backswing that's getting inside and flat, causing all those problems on your downswing. If you are new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Hit the like button if you like the video as well. And if you want to be notified every time I put out a new video, hit the bell as well. Let's get into fixing this backswing that's getting too flat into the inside. And for a lot of golfers, it's really a major problem. Other sports have contributed. Might be hockey, getting the club, the hockey stick in around here. Could be tennis, where the club, or the racket rather, wants to go around you instead of going up and down. Some things can contribute to it, and some people just have the natural inclination to set up to a ball, raise the hands, and twist that thing to the inside and get it going flat. So let's talk about the main causes of it, and then what we can do to fix it. So first off, the way you grip the club can drastically affect how that club goes back. And for a lot of players, when they grip it with a very weak position, with the hands turned to the left for a right-hander, that makes the arms roll and whip that club to the inside. So the club starts here, and with that weak grip, it just wants to roll and get flat right off the get-go. For other players, it might be something else, but one way or another, a flat backswing is going too far around your body and too low versus up here high enough to get a strike on that ball coming down. It's also very possible to have your setup in such a way that your shoulders are incredibly open, pointed off here to the left, and then it makes you sort of move in such a way that hoists the club back to the inside and pulls it flat as well. When we watch the different players on TV, pros on the LPGA Tour, PGA Tour, wherever it might be, we see different swing shapes out there. We see swings like a Justin Thomas where that club's going extremely vertical, straight up in the air, Fred Couples, Bubba Watson. We see other swings like a Matt Kuchar and other players that are extremely low and around and everywhere in between. And there's some things you have to really consider when you look at these different swings. And one is how the body is moving, and the other is how the arms and the club are moving. For most players that swing the club too flat on the way back, no matter where they set up, once that club starts to move around the corner, the shoulders are simply turning too flat to keep the club working up into the right position. So if their body is turning in such a way that they're just moving incredibly flat, this left shoulder is very high and I'm turning this way, that will send the club more around the corner and get back behind me and lower back here. They tend to raise the handle up, and then the front arm gets in front and moves the club this direction. It's very hard to get the club working super flat on the takeaway if your hands are staying lower and closer to your legs. So that's one of sort of the keys that you'll be working on with getting this out of your game, is that initial takeaway, keeping the hands in closer so the club head stays in front. And if you imagine someone like a Ryan Moore or even a Jim Furyk, where everything's in here very low, and then suddenly the club works extremely steep on the way up and goes this way. Well, it's very hard to do that, of course, if your hands are moving outward and rolling around. So that roll sends the club head in low, hands are high, front shoulder is high, and now I create this flat movement. And anyone who's had this flat movement here, if you're hitting a driver, you can come from there and sometimes hit a ball off of a tee okay. Even your wedge can actually be effective sometimes if your swing is flat, like a Lee Trevino, some of those players that used to swing the club flatter, because you're in close enough to the ball here that if you happen to get the thing flat and around the corner, you're still close enough to get an angle on the ball and hit just enough down to get it up into the air. When it comes to hitting these guys though, middle irons, hybrids, fairway woods, we know we've got to have a down strike on it, but on the correct angle. So a club coming down on the right swing plane, like so, is critical to get you the right angle on the ball to compress it and get it up the club face and up into the air without getting too steep or over the top. Anything that's coming from the inside too flat is going to hit that topper where it rolls right over the top of the ball and just rolls it. So that's why the flat swing is so devastating to some clubs in your bag, in the middle of your bag, like the middle clubs, fairway woods, hybrids, and it just doesn't affect the driver near as much, or a ball teed up, or like we said, even a wedge shot. Okay, now that we've identified some of the things that are causing this flat backswing, what can you do to work on getting the club working up the plane a lot better? Well, in the backswing and right off the get-go, we have to make sure that you can get this club working back properly on the plane. So we want to make sure this club is working back in such a way that your shoulders, arms, and club are all working together to move this butt end closer to your legs and the club head out in front like you see here. Anything that turns your arms, turns those forearms early, and sends the club head in and low is going to start it on its flat plane. So you have to go the opposite, keeping the hands in close and the club head out. Now I find one great way to work on that for a drill is to do one-handed swings. So if you do a one-handed move with your left hand, it's very hard to go this way without feeling it completely out of position. So working on the takeaway, just moving it, shoulders, arms, and club together in that position. Then put your right hand on and then start hinging it up, and that creates a steeper swing plane halfway back. Another great drill to do for working on this takeaway and getting this flat backswing out of there is to use 2 clubs and swing them back at the same time, 1 in each hand. So go ahead and set up there, put 1 in each hand, and as you move them back, because it's now heavier, you can once again start to feel this movement very easily if it gets around the corner. If you start hinging those up together, you'll very quickly feel what each hand has to do and how your body has to move to keep the club working up into this plane. Because it's, whether you're a real upright player or even a more rounded player, the club still has to be more upright than you were swinging it halfway back. From here, if you're more of a rounded style player, you're swinging it more around your body, you're simply turning your shoulders steeper at this point. After you get the club up here, you're just turning a little steeper, so your shoulders are steeper, but your arms are a little bit lower relative to your shoulders. Now, if you're a more upright player, standing more tall, once again, the club still has to get up here in the air, but then as you're turning, your shoulder plane is not quite as steep, and the arms are going up higher, like a Justin Thomas does. Now, we all have different swing shapes. Some go higher, some go more around, but one of the main factors that sort of ties into how high you can swing a golf club is your left shoulder and the health of your left shoulder. If your left shoulder is able to lift and reach and raise the club up in the air, well then, as you're swinging and as your arm is going up in the air, you can get the club higher up. If, however, you have problems with the front shoulder or it's just tighter, as you go back, the height of your arm might be here. That might be it for you. You might not be able to lift that any higher than it is here. But that won't affect the plane, overall plane of your swing and the effectiveness of your swing if you're working on these drills to make sure the hands are in close, the club head is out, and then it hinges up to here, whether that's the top of your swing or you're more up here in this area. You're still able to now get the club to shallow out, get back down into plane, and compress that iron. Now, this flat backswing can really affect how the club comes into the ball, of course. We set up a little device here to show sort of the overall plane or general plane of the takeaway. When you're working the club back for drills, if you put something in the ground here just to work on the takeaway, take it back a foot or two, don't hit balls with it there, but simply work that takeaway. And you'll start to get a sense of, if you're rolling it into that, if you're twisting the club and rolling this front arm especially, or going, you can see very quickly what that habit is and how it's affecting also the shoulder plane of the pivot, which then moves you off the ball a lot, pulls you way back here and gets you flat. Most players from here are going to have a very hard time just coming from the inside and hitting a good shot, other than with the driver like we talked about earlier. But in here, this is the feel or look you can learn, and then start to hinge it to get the butt end pointing more down instead of more out like it normally is when you're swinging that ultra flat backswing. Now, it's so vital that you fix this flat backswing because, as we know, you hit it with your downswing, and from a super flat position here, it's very difficult to make a good downswing. Some players have been able to get away with it by taking it in flat, hoisting it up and then pausing for a while, and then still getting it on plane. But it's very challenging to do. If you're a player who does get it around and you can't fix it, if you wait long enough up there and you give your body long enough to get started, you can still get it on plane. But once again, much more difficult to do. Physics is really working against you. Things that go around the corner this way tend to want to work their way back over the top. And so the reason you want to fix it really is to make your downswing function easier. So when you're taking this club back properly and it works its way here in balance, hinges up, and it's much easier to shallow it out. As your legs start working properly coming down and you get into this position here, much easier to get the club into the ball when a club is working its way up and then down. And this concept of balance is something really important. You want to realize that when your club is on its end, it's easier to swing it in balance. So when the club works its way up, it's just easier to move. And from here, just like a baseball player, where they step and the club wants to shallow that way, the same thing happens in golf. As your club goes up into a little more upright position, much easier then, as you sit and rotate into your legs, the club then wants to shallow out and get on a much better path coming down. Okay, so I hope you can see now what causes that club to get inside and flat and how to fix it. If you have any questions or comments, leave it down below. I'll be happy to answer your questions. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.